What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to yet another Sales Hacker webinar. You know who I am. I run digital marketing at Sales Hacker, and today we're featuring two very, very special guests. We have Noah Goldman, who is a sales consultant to some of the world's top B2B tech brands. And we also have Allison Welch, who is the VP of Enterprise Business at Twilio. So welcome, guys. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
Awesome. And today we are going to talk about how to properly identify your prospects' pains to skyrocket your win rate. Now, this topic is highly discussed. It's been highly, I would say, put into the spotlight on LinkedIn, on various highly authoritative blogs and websites in the B2B tech sales and marketing world. But today we're going to feed this to you from a different angle. We're going to do a live exercise that kind of shows you exactly why it's not really all about selling ROI, as so many self-proclaimed thought leaders talk about on LinkedIn and so forth. We're actually going to show why the catalyst that drives your prospects to buy is really about timing. And we have two experts on the webinar today that's going to unpack all of that for you guys step by step, super actionable, super tactical. After today, you'll be able to implement any of these new ideas right into your process, and hopefully you'll be able to see some results. So without further ado, I'll just go through the agenda right quick, and then I'm going to pass it on to Noah. But before we do that, why don't we have a brief introduction? So Noah, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and then Allison, you can go ahead and do the same, and we'll run through the agenda and get things started. So Noah, over to you, man.
Sure. Well, how can I beat what you said? Yeah, like I said, I consult B2B sales organizations and also increasingly coaching individual sales reps and sales leaders, which has been tremendously edifying and to work with. And I'm very excited to be here for the webinar.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us. Allison, over to you. Welcome.
Hi, thanks everybody. My name is Allison Welch, and I'm the head of enterprise business for Twilio. I've been here about a year and a half, been in the B2B enterprise sales software space for 20 years. Really excited to talk about this topic. I spend a lot of my time both building teams and then being bombarded by kind of irrelevant pain questions. So I'm excited to give you guys some advice on how to target more effectively and be really relevant for the targets that you're going after. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really fortunate to have both of you folks with us today. As you said, Allison, you have over 20 years experience. Noah, you as well. So, I mean, a combined almost half a century worth of experience here in sales. So,
great. So great. I love it.
Audience,
glasses.
Yeah, the audience is definitely in for a treat today. By the way, audience, just so you know, if you have any questions, feel free to just plop them into the Q&A. There's a Q&A tab on your Zoom dashboard that you'll be able to ask us questions with. Don't use the chat feature because then we won't see them. Please use the Q&A and we'll get those in as they come. And just in case you miss anything or you need to pop off or you need to X out the screen, whatever, you're going to get a recording follow-up of this entire webinar, so don't worry. And you're also going to get the deck. So no need to worry, you're not going to miss anything, but hopefully you can stay through to the end. This is going to be super engaging and interesting. So let's get to the agenda. Number one, why do people even buy anything to begin with? You may think this is obvious, but maybe to some folks it's not. Number two, what's the difference between a priority and a problem? Again, something that you might think is fairly obvious, but we're going to unpack why it isn't. Tactical questions to ask your prospects, do's and don'ts. Definitely want to stick around for that. Then Allison's going to unpack why the timing of the pain is even more important than the pain itself. And then, of course, some tactical advice on how to live a day in the life of your customer and why that is so crucial to your sales process. So, all right, without any further delay, let's just get right into it. Noah, I'm going to pass it over to you and let you work your magic. Why do people buy anything? Over to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, G. How can I beat that intro? But yeah, so I'm really excited about this webinar because if there's anything I see wrong, it's that when I'm working with individuals, when I'm working with teams, and when I'm, as Allison mentioned, receiving, or in previous life when I would be receiving some of these cold inbounds, what I realized was they were completely divorced from what it was that actually leads anyone to buy anything. And it was surprising to me, why, what was going on here, that so few people really kind of got this. And it's relatively simple. We'll go through it. We have a live exercise to do it. But so the first question you have to ask is, why do people buy anything? Why do people buy things, right? I mean, why are they saying, all right, this is the moment that I need to open my wallet or go to get an approval or whatever, or start a requisition cycle? Why are they doing it for anything, right? And so the thing is that a lot of people will tell you it's to solve problems. Here's the thing about that. There's a lot of problems, okay? But there are only so many priorities. We can go to the next slide on that.
Yep.
So there are only so many priorities that a organization needs to deal with, right? And so let's ask the question, what's the difference between a priority and a problem? Okay, we can advance one more. Here's the way I see it. An organization or an individual is dealing with many problems all the time. All right, my joke is that Jay-Z was right. They got 99 problems, but only 96 or so matter. Okay, right. So you'll say like, hey, I want to sell. We got this really crazy, amazing thing that we want to sell you, and we know that you're probably spending a lot of money on turnover, or you need more revenue, or you probably want more leads, and those might all be problems. The question is, are any of those priorities at the moment that you're talking to them, or anywhere in the foreseeable future? And that is really where the rubber hits the road. Yeah, exactly. So the question is, how do you differentiate what a problem is from a priority? Okay. And so the first way to look at it is that a priority isn't necessarily, and probably isn't strictly logical. Okay. Especially in B2B selling, a lot of times what you're doing is you're an external manager of someone else's career. Okay. Right. Like they're going to try to, selling this service is not going to change the earnings per share for GE, but it might help make someone's career in the division that they're in at GE. Okay. And so that isn't, or they're about to get fired if they don't make a change, right? Which is logical to them, but it's not necessarily a nuts and bolts, this will make the business better. Unfortunately, that's just what it is. So you have to look at it and say, this might be something that, again, the whole thing of people, they buy on emotion and they justify on logic. That's this point, right? So the second point is that it's 100% time sensitive, and we're going to get into this, right? Which is, and I think Allison's also going to speak to this a lot as well, is that at the end of the day, again, they got 99 problems, 96 or so don't matter. What are the three that matter? And the three that matter are things where, we'll go to the next point here, a new bigger pain will arise if it's not handled, okay? Right. So, for instance, I don't know if we're going into this in the next slide or not. No, we can keep it, well, you can go back to the last slide for a moment. So, the way to look at it is this, right? So if you say to someone, hey, this is a sales acceleration tool, and it'll give you more leads, more revenue, right? Here's the thing about more revenue. Apart from whether or not they're really engaged to actually act on that, and that's a whole other issue. Let's assume they're like, yes, more revenue is a thing we want to deal with. What is more revenue?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? Oh, it's like, here's $1, shut up. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing when I talk to coaching clients, like, I want to make more money. Here's $1, shut up and get out of my face. I don't have time for this. Figure out what is the stage you want to get to. What is the problem you want to fix? What's going to happen if you don't do this? If you tell me if I don't make this money, I don't make the mortgage next week. Now we're saying new bigger problem, eviction, right? It is a binary state. Okay, going from you were housed and now you're not housed. Okay, so bigger problem that's not solved and by the way, me giving you $1 doesn't fix that problem, does it? Maybe $1,000 does, etc. So and so we can move to the next slide then.
Yeah, and more revenue is a thing that I see people trying to position as value or a value prop, and it's not.
No, I think it's a result. You have to think of that. Don't use the broad term of we'll bring you more revenue, because you sound like you're just, spitballing a result, and you don't really understand their business problem. So you lose a little bit of credibility when you're that generic with your approach too.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah. And it's not only that, right? The thing is that, again, someone will say, we want more revenue. It's like, okay, well, what else are you doing to fix that problem? Or if you say, or here's another thing, you'll have a call and you'll get someone on the line and you'll say, what are your business issues? Assuming they're actually telling you the truth. Let's go that far, right? They could be lying to you. They could be bullshitting you, whatever, right?
Okay.
This is a PG-13 webinar, by the way. But at the end of the day, assuming they're even telling you the truth, the question becomes, like, what does that even mean, right? It's like they want more revenue. Okay. And then they're going to say, yeah, that's important. That's priority. That's got executive oversight, whatever. And then they go dark and you're like, hey, I thought you wanted more revenue. You know, that your reactivation email is something like, hey, you told me in our discovery that this, that, or the other thing was a problem. It's like, as if that's going to work. And of course, you know, berating your customers. I've gotten enough of those. Allison, I don't know if you've got a bunch of those, like, hey, we talked in discovery about X, Y, or Z problem. Is X, Y, or Z problem not something you're dealing with anymore? Come on. Serious? Whatever. Anyway, I think this is funny.
Yeah.
The actions of dumb salespeople amuse me constantly. Anyway, so let's go to this, which is what not to do, which is we can stay on that which is something that we've already spoken about briefly, right? So like people will talk about like, hey, this has got, you know, let's talk about the ROI. You know, if you spend $1,000, you're going to get $10,000, whatever, right? Again, let's go back to priorities, right? At the end of the day, even an organization with unlimited budget has limited bandwidth in order to be able to manage new solutions, to be able to onboard their people onto certain tools, to be able to offboard them on other tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes it's not even about money. Sometimes it's just saying like, I have a vendor who will sell me a solution to every problem I have, but I can only handle the priorities, right? And we're going to get to how you figure out like more specifically what a priority is through example we're going to do. And like I said, similarly, don't sell more revenue, don't sell less costs, because it's not a binary state. Everyone wants more revenue and less costs, all right? But then the question becomes, again, what has led this to be a priority at this moment in time to get more revenue, and meaning what amount of more revenue is required versus, or less cost, how much less cost needs to be actualized, and for what reason? Again, what bigger problem will present itself if it's not otherwise handled?
Right.
And no, I think what you're saying too is just don't use these generic terms, right? Speak in the language of the customer that you're targeting. Find out from this exercise that we'll go through what is going to be realized as a top priority, and tie that there is a value to being able to articulate ROI, but don't just spew, I'm going to ROI.
Right, exactly. I see ROI. I see ROI not as much of a selling point as much as a justification later on in the process. If let's say like, hey, I'm bringing this up the chain, I need a business case analysis, whatever. I see that as outside, as sort of separate from the discovery process and of the initial sales process. I see it as something that's like, I know I want to do this. Now help me sell it internally. ROI in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's just not something you sell as the benefit. Like the benefit is you have X problem. You have binary state, which is going to be created, net new binary state, which will be created if X, Y, or Z problem does not get solved. Here's what we will do to solve it. And then you use ROI to say why this way of solving that is superior to other ways of solving that.
Yeah. And to Allison's point on generic terms, marketers are very guilty of this as well. How many times have you gone to a landing page or a blog article and you get hit with a pop-up and the opt-out says, no thanks, I don't want more ROI, or no thanks, I don't want more traffic with no leads, or no thanks, I'll remain as a sucky marketer, that's fine.
Right.
Like, you know, that's really no different than what you guys are talking about here.
And I think that sort of a tactic was cute. You know, it depends on your brand voice, and it can work. Like, like the AppSumo guys could do that and play around with it. But it's something like, if you're a little more serious, like, oh, so yeah, you want to be a sucky marketer? That's cool. Just opt out. Like, okay, great.
Yeah, anyway, it's whatever. Anyway,
whatever. Anyway, so we can move on from there.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, yeah. So, by the way, like I said, no one cares, even if they say they do, even if they're like, yes, I want more revenue, right? Again, they don't really care unless they've committed to act. And we're going to talk about figuring out how you know they're actually committed to act. Because if they're not committed to act, they'll be like, yeah, I want more revenue. Yeah, I want to hire more salespeople. Yeah, I want less cost, but whatever. I mean, and again, it doesn't have to be that generic. I'm using it because we're talking to a broad audience, right? But the problem with light discovery.
I lost you. Can you guys hear me? I'm going to dial back in.
Hi, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you. You've frozen though.
I think you're just frozen on your screen,
Yeah,
Allison, but you're there.
But yeah, so like the point I was making was about light discovery, right? We get to a point where someone says yes to your question as connected to a problem, and then we just say, oh, okay, well, yeah, so that's a problem. You're committed to dealing with that, right? Where they may or may not. By the way, my friend Townsend has many things. Gee, get T on.
I'm a fan of Townsend. He keeps it real.
He keeps it straight up real.
Yeah. He's no fluff zone, man.
No fluff zone. Anyway, so but yeah, so like that he talks a lot about that, about being committed to action, because that's extremely important, right?
Yeah. So what's this your biggest deficit thing about? Let's unpack this a bit.
Yeah, I'll definitely unpack this. So here's the problem I find with a lot of salespeople, and I don't blame them per se because it's not really their fault, but it is nonetheless a disadvantage, right? So if you're a B2B sales, if you're a B2B sales professional and you're an individual contributor and you've, let's say, been in an individual contributor for 5, 10, 15, I've worked with some 20 years, right? They've never been a manager. They've only been a quota-carrying sales rep. That's cool. There is nothing wrong with that. But realize you have, in that position, you can go your entire career and never have bought anything ever. I love that.
Allison, welcome back. Allison, she's back. It's all good.
One of my priorities, by the way, is stabilizing our communication.
That's good. There you go. Anyone looking to sell stable Wi-Fi to Twilio, this is what you call it warmly. Anyway,
this is what you call timing.
That's right. This is what you call timing.
I'll give you a real life pain point.
Absolutely. So but the point is that an individual contributor sales rep has never, it's to me, it's one of the biggest deficits in the way that we train salespeople. We onboard them, we promote them. I understand, I definitely understand someone's like, I want to be an individual contributor for my entire life. It's where the money is, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, that's great. But realize that you are in a seriously disadvantageous position because you've never been on the receiving end of the horrible cold emails that you probably sent or your SDRs sent. You've never been in a situation where you've had to weigh those priorities, where you had to say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, we do want more revenue, but I got 10 ways to do that, right? And by the way, we gotta build up this team or whatever. If you're on the receiving end, right? Yeah. But if you're just being told by your moron sales manager, sell ROI more, or marketing or whatever, sell these generic or quasi-generic terms, you're not. And then you're like, why isn't this resonating? I don't really understand. You got to realize you've never been in that position before. If you were a car salesman, you've probably bought a car. Okay. You know what it's like to be in a place like, oh, man, I need a car, right? Okay, great. So what do I look for in a car, right? I got all these different choices. Why would I buy a car now as opposed to last week? We're going to talk a lot about that in a second. Are we at the exercise next, actually?
Actually, before you go on, I mean, one of the things you're saying really hits home, and it's too bad that we don't, the rep never has felt that other side of the seat, where as an operator of a business, you're constantly bombarded and you take the really good calls and you dismiss the terrible emails, the poor misspellings, the problems versus priorities type of approach. Yeah. And you all should think, as you're building your careers, or if you're a lifetime sales individual contributor, that's great. But do try and put yourself in the seat of an operator. Not used car. No one wants to be compared to a car salesman. But honestly, they're really great salespeople if you find good ones and you can connect with them, and they're figuring out your priorities. So maybe that's a transition into your exercise.
Right. Yeah, totally. And actually, as you mentioned that, as it happens, just pitch for my podcast that I've had Allison on. Wonderful. I sort of let it go dormant a little bit, but I think the last one I did was about the guy who was the world record car salesman. And even though my audience is primarily B2B, I was amazed at how this guy was able to. He sold 1,500 cars in a year. I mean, it's like a good month is like 20 cars. A great month is 30 cars. He averaged like 140 cars a month. It was insane.
Yeah.
But like he goes through, what does it mean to really understand what it is people are coming to him for, right? You know, he's at a Chevy dealership or something. They got 10 Chevy salesmen there. They got people lined up 3 deep for him, and the other guys are twiddling their thumbs. Like, what is this guy doing differently, right? He's understanding his customer.
Right.
But yeah, are we on the exercise next?
Yeah, let's do it.
Boom, an exercise with G.
Boom, let's get this done. Let's get this done.
That's good. So like I said, look, again, I don't begrudge anyone who has not been in a position to actually buy before. I'm not, or for a business. Like, again, that's somewhat circumstantial. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, that doesn't mean you can't approximate it, because everyone who is on this webinar, what we got, like, wow, 108, holy cow, that's awesome. Everyone who's been on this webinar has bought something. Okay, congratulations.
Yeah.
You're quasi-qualified because you have bought something. I'm guessing, right? I'm guessing, like, you bought the laptop, you're looking at this.
Someone is pressing yes on Amazon right now, I'm sure.
Right. You're shopping on Amazon while you're supposed to be working. Right. You bought the iPhone. You're looking at Instagram on right now as opposed to making cold calls with. I get it. I understand. Anyway, needless to say, so we're going to do a little exercise here. We're going to talk to G, right?
All right, let's do it.
G,
Which G? Is it you, Noah, or is it? I'm confused. Okay.
That's me. That's the short from my grandiose Italian name, Gaetano.
Hey,
oh. Hey, no. Before we get into this exercise, actually, I'm wondering from Allison. You know, speaking from the standpoint of reps, they don't get a chance to see what it's like to be buying for your business. Obviously, you guys can lift a peek under the hood and show your reps the awful executive emails that you get. But is there anything actionable or tactical that you guys are doing at Twilio to kind of alleviate that problem that you might be able to share with the audience before we get into the exercise?
I mean, nobody wants their pocketbook impacted, right? You want to be paid. You want the biggest commission checks you can possibly get. But there's some experimentation that we're doing around like high quality experiences with our customers. Our CEO brought in Danny Meyer, who's the restaurateur. He started the Shake Shack recently.
Oh, yeah.
His whole thing is wear the customer's shoes, right? And Danny Meyer lives by this standard of it's not about service, it's about hospitality. And so we transcend that into the authenticity that we bring into the sales force and like how good you are, how credible you are, how much value you bring to your customer. It's a tenet, it's a theme. So it's a priority for me, if using the word here. I don't have a comp metric on it, but it's certainly something I'm doing as I'm like stack ranking the team and whatnot.
Awesome. Yeah. And just for context, how big is your team?
I've got 30 people on the team so far. So I run the Western division for Twilio's enterprise team.
Awesome.
West of Mississippi, North America. Looking for people. Send me your resume.
There you go.
There you go. All right, so let's get into this exercise. Noah, this is going to be a gem for the audience, so let's do it.
It's going to be fun. I love interactivity, right? So, G, you've bought things before, right?
I have.
Awesome. Let's talk about something that you bought recently. What have you bought recently, personally?
Okay. It could be anything.
Can be anything.
All right. Let's see. Well, I recently bought a pair of basketball shoes.
Love it. Okay. When did you buy those basketball shoes?
I bought those basketball shoes. Let's see. Today is Thursday. So I bought the basketball shoes on Monday.
Got it. Okay, cool. Why'd you buy the basketball shoes?
My friends invited me to a pickup game on Tuesday because it was going to be my last day in New York City as a New York resident since I'm moving to Florida. Yeah. And as like a kind of a last cool thing to do, we organized a pickup game in the park in New York City on Tuesday.
When did they tell you about that game?
Over the weekend.
Got it. Okay, so you bought it on Monday and you told over the weekend and the game was on Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So, but don't you have basketball shoes?
I do.
Okay. Well, why'd you need new ones?
Photo op. Instagram.
Yes, of course. I want to look good for the gram. That's key. That's key. You know, New York City,
Very
Italian
event. I get it.
memorable event, New York City Italian boy. You know, I gotta be looking squeaky clean at all times for the cameras. But
fresh, man, it's all fresh.
You gotta be fresh. But really, what it came down to is I had a pair of basketball shoes already, but they were old, and I didn't think that they would be good enough to hold me down.
Got it. So in theory, you could have, like, if every Foot Locker in the city closed down, but like you could have like hurt yourself or whatever.
Yes. In fact, the rubber was falling off on the bottom of them, and they just were dirty, and I was ready to play at like full potential, and I felt in order to do so, I would need a clean, fresh pair of kicks.
I'm trying to find a cool picture of what I think he bought, but I don't think I have controls.
Well, I bought the Kyrie Irvings.
Okay. Why'd you get the? Okay, cool.
I'm working on the research. Hold on.
Check it out. Check it out. The Kyrie Irvings.
I got that. So we'll get into that in a minute. Like I said,
okay.
We can spend. By the way, this exercise can go as long as you want. Like this thing could like go down to like why this, why that, right? This amount of time, that store, etc. You can go down this forever. But let me ask you this. So okay, so you said on Sunday or over the weekend at some point. They said basketball game, right? And so you're like, yes. Monday I'm going to that, and then it was on Tuesday, right? So yes. What would have happened? So you got the Kyrie Irvings. You had heard about these before, I guess? They were.
Yeah, I've heard about them before, but I've never seen them.
Gotcha. Okay, so
yeah.
if you were in we don't need to go.
Can I ask him one question though? What color did he get?
I got the whites.
The whites are cool. Yeah. I like them. Did you get the gold flashy thing?
I did. Yes, I did. Yes.
All right.
So,
yeah, that's it right there.
You got him? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm doing my research while we talk. See,
nice. Yep.
So I guess that so at the end of the day, you had heard about these before. They were you didn't do a tremendous amount of research on these. Like you basically knew what you wanted, or.
I usually go into a store and just kind of see like, what catches my eye. Brand familiarity does play a role in this for sure, but it just comes down to me ultimately for comfort. And I was in a hurry at the time, so I just needed to get in there, get something fast and something that I knew would do the job.
Gotcha. Okay. So that was you had a sense of a price range when you walked in there?
Yeah. Usually like my price range for basketball sneakers is usually like $100.
Okay, and this was right around that?
Yes,
75.
It was. Yeah.
They're between 75 and 125, depending on.
There you go.
It is. Yep.
The research analysis has got it on lock. I also would say this, because again, we can go on through this forever, but let's say, so you said over the weekend you were told about this. If I came to you on the previous Wednesday, and I was like, hey, G, have you heard about the Kyrie Irvings? They make you run faster, jump higher. You're going to be the best baller in town. They're awesome. They're a great price, but they're not too cheap. So you look too cheap, but they're not too expensive that you like can't make the rent. Like these are great shoes, man.
Mm-hmm. Great ROI.
Before you knew you had a basketball game. Come on, let's do it, right? Let's do business.
Right? I'd probably look at you and say, yeah, I don't care.
What do you mean? These are great shoes, bro.
Yeah, I don't really care. Not a priority.
Not a priority. Interesting. So this was a quick version of this, right? And it's extremely simple, and it almost makes you sound like it's like, wait a minute, we're talking about basketball shoes. We're not talking about like I sell complex B2B blah 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 widgets. I get it. I totally get it. But here's the thing: this doesn't really change that dramatically. It gives you enough of a sense to be like. As Allison, I believe, is nodding her head there. If I say like, at the end of the day, it's like, it really does come down to a lot of that timing and priorities, right? It's like you can sell all these things that are seemingly great, running fast, jumping high, whatever, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, they only have so much bandwidth for what's going on in their head, and they're going to solve the problem that is imminent to them. Okay. Correct. And so it doesn't, and again, you are, as they say, or, as Gary Vee says, right? It's like, everything's human to human, man, which is true. Yeah. But it's not B2B, it's human to human. You got to change the paradigm. It's true. But needless to say, what I'm saying is this is the thing, right? We're selling like everyone always wants these things that are otherwise great things, right?
Yeah.
are better, more revenue, lower cost, blah, blah, blah. And here's the other thing I would challenge everyone on this call to do. At some level, absolutely everything you have ever bought, ever, gets exposed by this exercise. Ever. All right. Now, even impulse purchases, all these sort of things, it takes a little bit longer sometimes to go through this, but I recommend you do this. Hey, what'd you buy this morning? I've done this with people I've coached. What'd you buy this morning? Pack of gum. Why'd you buy a pack of gum? I needed money and there was no ATM around, but I could get it at the grocery store if I bought a pack of gum. You know what I mean? Like, we're solving a net problem, which is I needed cash because I'm going to the barbershop or whatever. Right? Like, at the end of the day, it's like, it wasn't even about the benefit of the gum. It wasn't about, your breath's not going to stink, whatever, blah, 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 right? It was about, hey, I needed cash. There was no ATMs around. Like, seriously. And so you try this anyway. So so go into these questions here. So that's what you can do individually. You can do this with your other sales reps. You can do this with your parents. You can do this with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, right? You can go through this process and say, when was the last thing you bought? And then talk about it. And then say, oh, well, why'd you buy it? And we're going to get into it with these three questions, right? The first thing is, what's going to happen if this doesn't get fixed? For G, he was going to break his ankle. He was going to do this, that, bad things were going to happen at his basketball game, right? He was not going to be able to have the experience that he wanted at the basketball game. He's going to get hurt. He's not going to look fresh for the Instagram, whatever, right? Like that, it's important, right?
That was the number one thing. He just doesn't want to.
It's number one. It's number one.
What's number one?
Looking fresh for the gram.
Looking fresh for the gram.
I gotta flex for the gram, baby.
That's right. Grammar, it didn't happen. Anyway.
That's right.
All right. So then the other question, what have you already tried to do to fix this, right? So it's like, what'd you do? Well, you probably went through either your mental inventory or your closet and you're like, oh, I got shoes, right? Like, do I have shoes? Like, if I got shoes, or if I looked, like, I know I'm going to need to actually buy the shoes because I actually tried to fix it, right? And again, the last one, which is the most important question ever, which no one asks, why now instead of last week or next week? Mm-hmm. Why now instead of last week or next week? Mm-hmm. Like, everyone likes to think, oh, that's great, the world's best widget, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to get into how you can figure this out. Again, this is how we're doing this in terms of this works for B2C and B2B, your own personal purchases as well as purchases of your B2B buyers. But at the end of the day, you want to know that they're in a position to buy. You need to know. It's like, you wanted this thing fixed, right? So why didn't you do it last week? There's a reason. Right. And there's a reason they didn't wait a week.
I want to give you guys something to think about with this, because this is brilliant, and I definitely want to get Allison's take as well.
Sure.
One of the reasons why I chose to go into SEO, inbound marketing, as opposed to outbound and sales development is because I know that if I produce the right content that is going to rank highly, when that time comes for a prospect to search for that problem they're having, whenever that time is, it doesn't matter when, I'm going to be there.
Yep.
A fundamental disconnect that I see with outbound is that they can't time it. They don't know when that problem is happening. They don't know if they're reaching out when that problem or that catalyst is going to occur. So, Allison, I'll defer this to you for a second, then I'll get Noah's thoughts. Like, how do you get around this with outbound? Because even with me, like, I get bombarded on LinkedIn and email with like, hey, we're a web development agency and we do PHP and JavaScript, and do you need help with your website? And it's like, no, I don't. And I just ignore them. And it's like all these sorts of things. I mean, so what do you think?
You gotta live in the shoes, right? You've gotta you gotta put on the thinking, no matter how much outbound you have to do. And I know people are on high velocity teams. They have to make hundreds of calls and, it's hard to do the research, but like for me, if you're going to call me today, what's top of mind? It's Q3 for me. I'm on a calendar fiscal.
Right.
I'm about to go on vacation tomorrow for a week. So I've got to like figure out that. And yet I still have to hit, the Q3 process. I'm hiring. You can look on my website and see that I've got a number of different open heads. So how am I figuring out my sourcing? I probably have a target on my head on when I need to get those hires in. Like, so look at the person you're calling or the part of the company you're trying to get into, and then go to their website and try and figure out what's going on in their mind for 5 minutes before you pick up the phone.
Right.
So the timing is more relevant for you on the outbound, because you're not going to hit it right, but if you might, if you do some research and you think about what might be their priority.
Yeah.
For me, it's really easy. You go to our website, you see we're launching a big product in October at our at our Signal conference called Flex.
Right.
Okay, so where do you think I'm thinking? Where's my head? I'm trying to get a bunch of people in a room in San Francisco at an awesome event. By the way, you should all come in October. Will be a great time. So, speak to me in what's relevant, and do that with your brands, and everything is so transparent. You can find it anywhere. You don't have to guess anymore on what's top of mind. You just do a little bit of research. Hey, if you're calling this persona, my guess is you probably have that persona in your building, in your company. Go pick their brain for 5 minutes. Go talk to the head of marketing or their director or what have you, and get okay, I'm thinking this company, is this a good tactic?
That's so simple and so brilliant. I think you just solved one of the biggest issues that I see in the outbound sales world, and you explained it within less than 90 seconds.
Oh, perfect. Well, I hope that makes rain for everybody.
Yeah. Noah, what do you have to add to that, brother?
Well, and I think that's exactly right. I think it really depends on your outbound strategy, right? It's like, if you're just like, hey, we got this great thing, and by the way, the quarter's coming up, so you want this, that, or the other thing. I just know you do, right? And you're super presumptuous. Even with some research, right? It really comes down to being somewhat empathetic with the person that you're selling to, right? If you have some sort of empathy and true understanding, not just surface level understanding, right? Then you can be in a position where, I don't love the word necessarily, but I love the book, and trusted advisor. You can be in a place where it's like, listen, let me put it this way. I believe salespeople, professional salespeople in the 21st century have two and only two non-automatable, in certain industries, non-automatable value adds, okay? They are to help a prospect select a solution and to help them implement it. They are not there to badger, to pressure, and to price discriminate, which is what a lot of reps think they do. Like, that's my job. My job is to just, kind of pound the quarter and try to get the biggest basket price I can. And it's like, okay, I mean, look, great, sounds good. But, at the end of the day, like, those are the two things that are B2B and even B2C buyers will accept.
Absolutely.
When they realize that they lack the ability to properly select or properly implement the solution that they want.
Yeah.
All right. And, for instance, you didn't need someone really to help you choose the basketball shoes, right? You had a general sense of what was out there.
Your SEO worked really well.
Yeah, right.
The SEO worked good.
You knew how to tie your shoes. I've talked to people before. People I've coached are like, hey, I want to be a salesperson. I love cars, all right? And they're like, great. So what happened last time you tried to buy a car from a salesperson? They tried to put me in something that I didn't want. Right? Because at the end of the day, and for that instance, the salesperson wasn't needed because the prospect was more educated than the salesperson. They didn't need help in selection. They didn't need help in implementation. So they were seen as superfluous, which they were. And there are many many SaaS solutions out there, which, if we're being honest, can actually be sold quite readily just through a buy button on a website, which is where everything's going anyway. But we put salespeople in there because we're using it because it's cheaper than SEO, I guess, to just bang out cold calls and emails. I don't know the answer.
It is. It's the most readily available solution. It's the most predictable especially for a lot of startups and early stage companies. They don't feel that an investment in SEO is worth it because it takes too long to see results. They'd rather just get some relatively inexpensive junior level people to just pound the phones. But with that being said, I want to.
I know we're going to go to Allison. I just want to mention real quick. Do we have? I think we had one more slide for me. I'd like to go through real quick.
Yeah, let's go through it. We have about.
And I think Allison's going to talk to it, but it's probably the last slide.
Yeah, let's do that. We have about 25 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm going to go through this in like 30 seconds because I think Allison's going to run with it a lot.
Let's do it.
I think she and I are thinking the same page here. These are the things you can do today along the lines of everything we said. Become BFF, AE, and all that with your customer success team, all right? Because these people have the goal that you need. They talk to your customers every single day. They know who you need to talk to. By the way, managers, if your reps don't know the names of the people on your customer success team, summarily fire them. But whatever, that's a whole other issue. That's a workplace readiness issue, in my opinion. Then also ask your best clients those 3 questions we had before. Why'd you buy it now? What else have you tried? What else did you try to do to fix it before? Whatever the third one was, I'm not remembering off the top of my head. And the last one is, to Allison's point, you sit in on internal pitches, right? If you sell accounting software, you have a CFO who's being pitched accounting software. He's sitting on a couple of pitches, or he or she is sitting on a couple of pitches every single month. Insist, beg, borrow, and deal to sit on the other side and realize what it's like to be shown up and thrown up to death. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. All right. So anyway, needless to say,
I don't know how to follow that. I totally agree.
Anyway, but that's a lot of what we were sort of promoting, right? Anyway, I'm done with that.
Well, that's gold. And that is a short version of your last name. That's why you're the gold.
There you go.
So Allison, bring us over the finishing stretch here. Get into that timing of the pain and why that's so crucial to what you guys are doing at Twilio, and
Sure.
give us a rundown of what you mean by live a day in the life of your customer. We kind of scratched it, but
so customer or target, right? And you guys are, a lot of people on the phones here are probably doing outbound and don't have the luxury of going to talk to your customer success rep to say, what's my customer doing? So if you don't have that, which we don't have that necessarily at Twilio when we're doing outbound, we're calling, greenfield, net new opportunities and introducing them into why a communication strategy is helpful to their customer experience. But timing of pain, I talked about a little bit, like get in the mind of the person you're calling, look at their website, think about where they are in the cycle of their day and life. And if you don't know, if you can't figure out, hey, I'm calling a head of marketing, or I'm calling a head of accounting, what is pertinent in a public company in August versus in March? What are they dealing with? Or are there privacy issues, or are there things that are going on in the world that would help them go, oh, this person understands me, this person has empathy. So timing is really critical, and I take calls based on timing. Like if they nail it and they're like, oh, I bet you're struggling with enablement, you just hired 30 people, maybe you need some help, maybe you need some training. How are you guys doing with adoption of the certification process? How are your teams learning the pitches? Blah, blah, blah. Like that is really well timed for me to receive that type of a call. And I spend a lot of time there. Whereas if they're just calling me on a lead, yeah. Do you need more leads? Sure.
Yeah, I guess I do.
I'd love more leads, but like, what are you talking about? Do you even know my business and what kind of leads I would want? No. I don't take those calls.
So do you guys have like a target accounts list, and then you guys are doing unique research for each account, and you're kind of trying to align with the potential timings of those pains for each account, or do you do it more broadly?
It's broad right now. We have applicability really, and anyone who's using a communication component into their application or website is a great target for us. So. Anyone that's using a phone or SMS or some sort of chat communication is a great customer target. And I haven't really found a company that I can't call into. Right. So it's pretty broad, which makes it hard, right? That's a really broad spread. So how do you hone your craft? And how do you be specific? So you need to learn how to prioritize and do all the things you were telling to find the priorities. But for yourself, when you've got that large of a segment to cover, and you can really call into any industry based on your geography, you need to be able to craft a story based on the personas that you're targeting. So we're doing a lot of thinking around that. We have sales plays that we train on, and then we have a lot of different nuanced solutions that we bring up, and we're not perfect at it by any means. We've got a long way to go.
Do you guys find any any sort of commonalities or common patterns within the accounts that you're breaking into and being successful with?
In terms of like what their priorities are.
Yeah, in
We
terms
do
of timing, yeah.
We try and do a lot of that pattern matching.
Yeah.
So, we're fortunate we get a lot of inbound. So with the inbound, we're doing pattern matching on the inbound and then mapping that to the outbound and looking at trends that way as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. No, anything to add on any of that?
No, I think that she made the point we've been making this whole this whole webinar, right? It's like, don't come to say like, hey, more leads, right? Like, know the business, right? And to her point, it really is harder if someone's like, just sell to everyone. It's like, you really, like, you have to choose at a certain point, right? And if your boss won't choose for you, and it depends on how what your territory is, or what the strategy is, or, you're only allowed to talk to companies that start with R that were founded on a leap year. I mean, whatever, still you can then go down and say, how can I be a value add in terms of selection and implementation for this particular segment? And you maybe do 2 or 3, but you can't do 1,000. It's pretty good.
Right. So, hey, Allison, would an example of a catalyst also be something like this? Just throwing this out there. Sure. Let's say one of your competitors raise a round and they go through a radical pricing restructuring scheme.
Sure.
And that a lot of their customers are going to be rattled by this. Would you consider that a potential catalyst as well, or do you?
I think that's a great. There's a blend. There's a gray line or a soft line between ambulance chasing and like sophisticated, authentic concern about that event that you just described, right?
Right.
We certainly keep track of. We have a really great track record in terms of reliability and availability. So if we see a maintenance round for one of our competitors, that's an opportunity for us to do additional targeting and go after their customers. But I do, there's a appropriate way to do that so that you don't want to be perceived as someone who's just going after the pain that's caused by someone else's, change of business or what have you.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, absolutely. That's a great event. And then targeting a campaign around that and tracking the success rates and getting the feedback. I think back to Noah's point, like, ask them why. What are you going to do? You bought this. Those questions are still relevant with that type of a scenario where if your customer's current provider is doing something materially different to cause their business, potential change or risk, go back. And so you bought this, when did you buy it? Do all those questions. What made you buy it? What do you think about this approach? It's still really relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And then getting into living a day in the life of your customer, like what are some of the actionable sort of takeaways you can provide the audience with, like some tips to actually do this?
Ours are super easy at Twilio because we are really lucky to have customers build amazing communication like through applications, right? Most companies have apps. So if I'm going out to one of my customers, I'll use the food service industry, big customer base of ours. So going to talk to Postmates about a service that they need to incorporate. Well, I better be using their service. I have downloaded it. Maybe I've ordered a couple of dinners through it, enjoy the service as well, take advantage of it. So we have the opportunity to use really cool consumer experiences and do that day in the life. If it's more of like a B2B, gosh, you're the oil and gas guy, and you don't have sexy apps to download like Postmates, but that's who you're calling on. They're still probably working with an extremely complex set of network applications to talk with supply chain and handle communication across a number of different vendors. They may not be through beautiful Apple or Android apps, but there's still a way to do that research through the web that you can do that day in the life. So the day in the life to me is really important. Understanding that persona, understanding what tools they live in and what they're trying to build as a customer experience for their customers. That's relevant for us because we're talking about customer experience all day long.
Yeah, that's huge. And do you guys have someone doing research on the different customers segmented by industry or vertical?
We do, yeah. We have a full marketing team that's looking at verticalization and by, product market fit. So I partner with them. They help my team with, different campaign strategies and content strategies.
That's brilliant. And in terms of like and forgive me if I'm getting too personal with these questions, but in terms of your pipeline generation, what would you say the breakdown is on that? Would you say it's pretty well balanced? Because you mentioned inbound being a big part of the strategy. Is it pretty well balanced between inbound, outbound, and maybe the upsell, referral, and customer success? Yeah.
I don't have the data by broken out in my head by that. We do a lot of different, slicing and dicing. We've been fortunate enough to work with the developer community for so long that we have a huge inbound momentum from our developer audience, who's been really, I think one of the reasons that we've been so successful. So what we're, I think, also trying to do is balance. We look at it not just by segment, but by profile of inbound. Is it, an individual who's building? Is it an individual who's in a line of business? Maybe not in the developer arena. So different ways of looking at it, but yeah, it's pretty balanced right now.
Nice. And then I think the last question I had for you was in terms of like getting back to that timing of the pain point that we were talking about, is what kind of collaboration is happening between sales and marketing to kind of pinpoint that and maybe produce content that's going to support your sales initiatives, or just overall campaign collaboration between the two teams?
So a lot of investment going into that work to do. We've, I think, been historically, if you look at Twilio, we've been really developer targeted with our messaging, with our content. Mm-hmm. So how do we shift into balancing creating great documentation for developers to be able to build with our APIs out of the gates, but also be able to talk to a chief digital officer or someone responsible for digital transformation, customer experience through communication that may not have that developer profile. Right. So we're working on that. And then there's collaboration with sales and marketing and through our enablement channel. So our enablement channel actually rolls up to our marketing organization, which is, I think, a good way for us to keep that connected tissue between a marketing and a sales content and usability, applicability, like how real is the content, how valuable is the content that's being produced in the field. We're giving a lot of feedback there right now.
Awesome. And I guess the last thing is, how often would you recommend like a team refresh sort of those or revisit those enablement initiatives to see how effective everything is?
We're like enablement crazy right now. We do a webinar every week. We had one this morning, and then we're producing, we have a wonderful enablement team who's constantly producing content. I think the area that I am challenged by, where like my leadership team and I need to be even more prescriptive, is focus. So you get so much content, and there's so many different, awesome innovations coming out of Twilio's platform, but where are the key areas that you need to be an expert in for your particular territory? So it's not so much that the enablement, it's high frequency enablement, but are you ingesting it because it's spread across?
I love it. Well, thanks for sharing the insight.
Definitely getting into my priorities. This is good. I feel pain. Yeah. I have anxiety. I'm ready to buy something.
Well, I love it. And the reason I ask these questions is because I think it's cool to give the audience a look under the hood of, a thriving business such as Twilio. It's pretty fascinating to hear all the different components that are going on there. But
come to our Signal conference.
Yes. And when and where will that be?
Yeah, thanks for letting me plug it. It's in San Francisco, October 17th and 18th at the not Moscone. It's at Bill Graham, which is a cool venue. If you guys haven't been there, it's down by the Civic Center. I have 20% off discounts, so ping me if you want to come. It's an awesome event.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Maybe I'll do a deal with the sales hacker team and get you guys a bunch of tickets.
All right. Yeah, we're down. Thanks for that.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. So we've got about 4 minutes left. I want to give you guys a moment to kind of wrap up, final thoughts, final takeaways, and then take a moment to let people know where they can find you, where they can connect with you and all that. So Noah, back to you, brother. Anything that you want the audience to really walk away with, a final thought, and then maybe let them know where they can find you, where they can contact you, and how they can keep updated to everything you're doing.
Sure. Get rid of BANT. That's the first one.
Oh, hell yeah. BANT sucks.
Even with your inbounds, realize that people might not be ready to buy. They might just be in vendor review mode. So as opposed to, and by the way, understand what that is and don't just discard them, like try to re-engage them, try to gain a conversation with them where you can actually get internal knowledge as opposed to saying like, all right, you're an inbound, you got banned. No, DQ. You know what I mean? Like it's a huge, like that lead costs like $700. like net or like more, like just
more. Yeah.
Like take the opportunity to realize like, hey, look, this can, maybe it's not saying today, but it can be something tomorrow, that kind of thing. People can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. They just search it, Noah Goldman.
Yeah.
Cool. Allison, where can folks hit you up? Where can they learn more from you?
I love the get rid of ban.
Yeah, I hate ban.
I don't know. It's helpful sometimes when you're trying to do forecasting, but it's a terrible thing. So timing of pain, remember to think in the calendar year, the framework of your customer, your target, what they might be going through, live a day in their life, do research, you'll gain a ton of credibility. And you know what? You might have fun and learn something while you're doing it, which is even, better for you. And then, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Allison with a Y, Welch, and I'm one of the sales leaders over at Twilio. So would love to answer questions and help you guys out. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I think this has been probably one of the best, most action-packed, actionable, tactical webinars that we've had in a really long time. You guys have been phenomenal featured guests, so thank you again for joining us. Again, for the Sales Hacker audience, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Sales Hacker, and you'll be able to stay updated with all of our stuff there. You'll see the webinar replays. You'll see our normal content distribution there as well. And of course, if you ever want to reach out to me, you can just search me on LinkedIn. You can hit me up, Gaetano Donardi, or you can just email me, gaetano@saleshacker.com. So with that being said, that concludes our day. And I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you very much, and take care. We're out. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.